Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast, where we look at horses and riding from the inside out. I'm Kirsten Nelson, professional horse trainer, and with me, my co host, Deb Romero, certified Alexander Technique instructor. And today's topic is really sort of looking at something specific from the inside out. So, we want to take a look at
Well, that's true.
how horses respond to aids. And oh, there's a lot to
Mm-hmm.
unpack in that, right? Because we think if we give inside leg to outside
Mm-hmm.
rein, we're like, good, we're done, right? But how we
That we're
apply
going to get blah, blah, blah.
exactly that it's sort of
Yeah.
like push the button here, get the response over there. And that's a lot how we think of aids with horses. It's like, and
Mm-hmm.
there's even a term called a push button horse where you give the aid and the
I
horse,
forgot that term.
yeah.
Where are they?
Yeah. Until the dynamics kick in and then all the buttons fall off. They all break, right?
Right, right.
So that's sort of how we think of aids is that like on kind of a fundamental level, it's a condition response. And even lots of trainers teach aids that way, that you give this aid, you always get that response. And I go, like, to me, it just bypasses the whole relationship, the whole dynamic interplay of, balancing forces of motion or working really internally with the mind and body. Because I go, I guess you could even do that with a human.
Yeah, I guess.
You can create a conditioned
Well, that
response.
just brings up so much in my head because that is such a linear way of thinking. Instead, like you said, it really affects the relationship.
Oh,
And I never
yeah.
thought of it that way, but it hugely because then it becomes like an employer employee.
Well,
You
even that,
know?
I go child,
Yeah,
parent, employee, employer. It's like,
right.
we kind of think that way that if I tell you to do something, you're going to execute it the way I want.
Red flashing lights for me. Sorry.
And I'm like, how's that working across the
That
board,
doesn't
right?
work for me.
It doesn't work.
I
I
got
mean,
in a
we
lot
all,
of trouble when I was younger because of that.
yes, exactly. No, and kind of like a, you know, chestnut mare, I didn't always say yes to the request. I
Right.
go, you can request, but I can still say yes or no. And so we get very frustrated with our horses when our aids don't work the way we expect them to work. And our horse gives us a different response. And then we go, well, now what do I do?
And
Right?
that is so familiar as an Alexander teacher because it goes back to that time you had me thought I thought I was ready to go to a show and you put that pole out in front of me and I focused on the stupid pole instead of the
How,
balance and relationship of the, the horse.
yeah,
So it kind of just blows it out of the water for me
it
about
does. And
with the knowledge I have now, that if we don't set our horses up for success, whatever that means, the aid's not going to work anyway.
yeah. And what we tend to do is if the horse gives us a response we didn't want or didn't expect, we tend to just get louder. We get more forceful. We get stronger.
Oh, that's true. And I mean, we clench, we tighten. We think if we give more, like you said,
Like if
more,
if the
per,
horse if the leg aid doesn't appear to be working and we're having to put a lot of effort in, everybody goes and gets spurs. I go,
right.
that's the solution 9 times out of 10. And I'm like, how's that working for you? Right. And you go, well, now I've got my horse going forward, but now if I ride without the spurs, my horse has no forward. So I go,
Ah,
okay, so where's the self carriage in that? Where's the balance in that?
exactly.
You're getting the horse to go
Exactly.
forward because you're creating a pain issue, essentially. You're using leverage
Mm.
and you're creating pain, and any body is going to move away from pain. And I go, so when we increase the leverage of our aids, all the horse is doing is moving away from pain.
Yeah, because then to me, the relationship, the dynamics of it completely shifts.
There's no communication left, and there's no room
Right.
for individual development. There's no room for sort of the juicy, magical part of riding horses. Like
Right.
that just gets taken off the menu because it's not possible if we're looking at our aids as condition response, or we reach for more leverage when the horse isn't doing what we want. We're essentially saying, I'm going to create pain so that you do what I want. And I
Ugh.
go, how's that work with kids and animals and like other people and even employees? I go, nobody wants to work for that person,
Right.
right? Nobody wants to be around that person. So there goes the relationship with our horse because they look at us and they go, you are the provider of pain. You're no fun.
Mm.
I'm going to get harder to catch. I'm going to be less
Right.
cooperative. I'm going to be more anxious every time I'm around you. Like it's the logical end result if we think about it.
I totally agree. I brought a horse in a freebie for 6 months to rehab and found him a great home. And I just spoke with her the other day and was asking how he's doing. And she says, well, he gets really nervous in the arena. So we've just been going on trail rides. And I thought, well, what a healthy response. In,
Yeah, let
instead of going, oh, I've got it. He's raising his head. I need to put a tie down on him or in the arena because I want to do arena work, you know. So
right.
that voice of being able to say, I'm not comfortable here. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and if we actually look at our horses as individuals, right? I go, we have a relationship with an individual, just like our kids are individuals, right? We have a relationship
Right.
with our kids or parents or spouses or whatever. And so we have to figure out a way to work together with some give and take, with some communication, with some back and forth. And just because we have that relationship, or maybe as the parent, we have better foresight than our kids, right? That's how I look at horses. I go, horses don't have a lot of foresight for consequences of their actions, right?
Right.
So we become like a teacher role or we're in a parental role, but that doesn't mean the horse is always going to say yes to us or that it's just going to be a robotic conversation. I push this button, I get that response. I
Right.
go,
I think that's what we think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I go, get a cat. Like that, that never works.
Train how to train a cat.
How to train a cat, right? And some horses are kind of cat-like. Like they're like, I'll come when I feel like it. Yeah, I don't really want to, don't touch me today. I'm not in the mood, right? Or then they're all over you. They go, okay, now's the time, but it's not
Right.
convenient for you. And so that's just having a relationship with an individual. And
Yeah,
so
I I
if
had a
we,
I had a great Alexander teacher tell me once when you go to teach, have a goal and be prepared, but always show up to listen to what the students need.
absolutely,
Yeah.
because what makes a great relationship across the board, but I think especially with our horses, is if we just pause to consider what is it our horse needs,
I know,
right?
right?
What is it our horse needs? And I go, it's pretty simple. Horses are very simple. They need to feel safe and they need to feel physically comfortable doing the work we're asking them to do. So when we're increasing the leverage of our aids, we're definitely not making our horse more comfortable.
And
Like
how
that's
do we respond to their response?
exactly
Like the
because
situation I told you about this horse that I gifted to somebody. She chose a what I consider a much healthier response for the horse's sake for right now.
Yeah. And when I'm starting rehab, especially if it's a horse that's really defensive, emotionally sort of super anxious or super tense, I enter that relationship asking a lot of questions,
Good point. So do
right?
I.
Like I sort of go into that going, asking the horse rather than like we think of aids are not a request, that it's a demand, right? Like
Exactly.
we sort of think of aids as if I give this aid, you must do that.
Yeah,
And that's where
this
all
equals
the,
this. And
right, that's where a lot of that frustration lives with our horses or anger at
yes,
our horses, right? Because they're not doing what we told them to do. And if we just sort of turn that around and think of our aids or what we're asking the horse to do as a series of questions, right? Then the horse's response, we already know it's unpredictable. We don't know if we're going to get a yes, I think I can do that for you, or that works for me, or a no, I'm going to become more defensive, more resistant, move away from you, and sort of just block you, right? I'm going to unfriend you.
unfriend request.
Unfriend, right?
Got 30 days to figure it out.
Thumbs down, right?
Oh,
And
that's too
so
funny.
it's and like a horse that heart is hard to catch. I go,
Hmm.
they've basically blocked all their human friends. Like they're just they
They're
have just
done.
blocked humans,
Humans are
right?
off the list.
Horse humans are off the list. And so building trust and rapport with a horse that's hard to catch is how you get the horse to want to work with you. That's the key to it, right? And our aids, like when we're super strong, when we reach for leverage, if we think of the timing of our aids, because aids are just a nonverbal conversation between us and our horse, part of
That's
a
a good way to
nonverbal
put it.
conversation. So if we're super fast and quick in our aids, or if we're really strong or we're using leverage, what we sound like to our horse is demanding, intolerant,
Hmm.
um, critical, right?
Hmm.
All these things that we wouldn't want to feel that way if somebody was talking to us and they were going, they were demanding or critical or sort of, standing over our shoulder. Don't make a mistake. Don't make a
Oh,
mistake. Don't make
yeah.
a
Only
mistake.
do it this way because
Right.
this is the way I know that it works.
Yeah. This is the only
Yeah.
way you can do things. Right.
Wow. Oof.
And so the timing and the amount of force that we use in our aids either comes across to our horse as sounding very demanding or more like a question.
Hmm.
And even the thought of, I'd like my horse to stop. I'm going to ask my horse, can you stop when I apply the rein aid? And the horse might say no at first. So then my response has to be, do I get more demanding or do I wait it out? Do I stay persistent
Mm,
and
good point.
patient? Do I repeat the request without escalating my
All good
energy?
questions. Yeah.
Right. So that's what I mean by using like the tone or the
Hmm.
frequency determines whether or not, and it starts with our thought inside, right?
Totally.
That if I use aids with the intention of asking questions, the feel and timing of my aids becomes very different.
It's kind of like I was taught a long time ago from a client, and she's a CEO of something. Instead of saying to an employee, I need you to do this, she would ask, would you be willing?
Mm,
Would you
yes,
be willing to do this?
yes.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, and when we use words, there's still a huge non-verbal part of that communication.
Hmm.
So the frequency of how quickly or slowly we string words together, the tone of voice, the sort of highs and lows of our pitches,
Right.
and even our body language, right? Our expression, our energy, our body language, all of that is part of the nonverbal communication that we use with words. So if we take away words, the nonverbal conversation we're having with our horse is just actions. It's
Right.
just
And we
actions
and we
instead of
talked about
words.
a couple of podcasts ago about the anticipatory reflex. And is
Yeah,
that kicking in? Are we anticipating a certain result instead of just listening for a result?
right. Or being open to a response
Yeah,
from another individual. We have no idea what they're feeling inside. We have no
right.
idea if they woke up on the wrong side of the stall, if they had a bad day with their pasture mates.
Exactly.
We have no idea, right? So, would you be willing is
Mhm.
a different energy than saying stop,
Mhm.
right? And so, if my horse is going sideways and losing their mind, there's a time and a place to say, hey, stop, right?
Right.
But if I'm trying to refine communication with the same horse, maybe under saddle, I might have to change the tone. I might have to think more, could you stop? Could you organize in order to stop? Right? Could I be lighter with my rein aid before I get heavy? Or even if I anticipate, if I take my legs off my horse always shuts down,
Oh my goodness.
right? So what
Right.
happens is it becomes nagging. It's like, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And that's what our horse hears. So it's like they just tune out and they
I
just,
would.
yeah, they just quit listening and become really dull because we're nagging,
Right.
right? And with those very same horses in one ride, if I give the leg aid and they take one step and I take the leg aid off, so I give as light a leg aid as possible. And then as soon as they take a step, I take the aid off. That's sort
Yeah.
of like saying, thank you for doing such a great job.
Yeah. And I don't, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the direction I thought it was going to be.
Even that. Yeah. Do I need to steer
Yeah.
and get forward at the same time? Right.
Right. Right. If I ask for move to me, even though I am thinking I want the horse, if I tap him on the side, for example, if I'm on the ground and I'm expecting a lateral move, but what if he moves forward? I mean, that's still a yeah, healthy response. He just didn't know
Yeah. Because
exactly what I was asking.
if I use my leg aid or a whip, all it really communicates to the horse is don't stand still. That's all it can kind of
Exactly. And
communicate.
having that open mind and fine tuning it later, like, thank you
Mhm.
for your response. Let's move it to this direction.
Right. Because anytime we give an aid, we're basically in a nonverbal conversation. It can only say no to our horse. Don't do that because it is
Mhm.
a physical force of resistance, right? So anytime we're tightening our muscles, moving our skeleton, using our reins, spurs, whips, whatever, what we're doing is resisting whatever our horse's choice was. So if our horse chooses to stop
Exactly.
and we don't want to stay at halt, we resist the halt by giving a leg aid. So as soon as the horse moves, if
Right.
we're still giving the leg aid, then the leg aid has zero meaning to the horse. Because whether
I
he
agree.
moves or doesn't
Then,
move, you still are applying resistance. So it becomes meaningless.
right.
And
Exactly.
how our horse responds to the aid is not really in our control. Like it's like just like how you respond to something I say is not in my control. That's what makes an interesting conversation.
Exactly. And I don't know, to claim our own space around that, and not get sucked into the drama of somebody else's response,
Well, and even if we look at
even
it
if it's our horses.
from the human side, let's say we give a leg aid and our horse bolts. For
Right.
some people are going to respond to that with terror. Other people are going to
Right.
be annoyed, and some people are like, "Woohoo, that was fun." And some people are like, all right, whatever, do what you want. That's, not exactly
I
what I asked
usually
for.
laugh.
So, yeah, I go, so even on the human side, the horse may, choosing an action,
Choosing an
halting,
action. Yep.
right? The horse is choosing an action, is in control of their own response. That's not what we can control, right? What we can control is how we respond to how our horse responded, or whatever our horse chooses to do. Our response to that is the only thing that we do have in our control.
Right. I love it that you said response and not react, because there's a
Well,
big difference.
sometimes a reaction is the response. I go, sometimes it is. And we feel out of control of our fear, our stress
Mhm.
response, but that is a response to our
Right.
horse,
Right.
right? And so what we do is we sell that horse, right? Don't want to deal with it. So how we respond to whatever our horse does is as unique as how any horse responds to any aid given by any human. Like you really don't know.
Right. You don't know.
Yeah. And so if we pose it as a question, if I give a leg aid, I'm saying a couple of things. I could pose it as I'm saying don't stay at halt, move, but I might not be sure what direction the horse is going to move. But the horse moved, right?
Right.
So if I take my leg aid off as soon as the horse moves, I say, hey, thanks for that. That's what I meant. Move your feet, right?
Right.
And what I hear all the time in training is, well, that's not energetic enough forward. I want more energy. I want more speed. I want longer
Wow.
stride lengths. And I go, that can be refined, but that's a physical issue of balance and developing the horse's talent. That's a different issue. I go, so if you have constant leg aids on because you're not happy with the forwardness your horse offers, then you're going to lose all forward because your aid means nothing and you're going
And
to be starting from scratch.
that's a great point, because we're not taking into account maybe the balance of it all. If the
Or that
horse
the
is
horse is doing the best they can with what they know
right,
right now. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
We may be thinking this A plus B equals C, this aid equals this, but maybe the horse isn't in a place that it understands or it can do that.
right. And not only that, but from the lowest level of like starting a horse under saddle or beginning riding up to Grand Prix level of competition, all we have is our seat, leg, and rein, really, at the end of the day.
Right.
That's it. And so if we're nagging with our legs or we're holding our horse back all the time through the reins, those tools of communication
Mm,
become meaningless. So
they
then we
do.
have no communication. And so if we criticize our horse for how the horse responded to the aid, we can easily destroy our ability to have a conversation with our horse at all
Mhm.
because constant leg aids start to mean nothing. Constant pressure on the reins start to mean nothing because
Right.
there's no pause. There's no back and forth.
It's almost
So,
like, to me, the pause after an aid is for listening and allowing.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
where is that space within the
Hmm.
conversation, right? Even you and I talking, sometimes we overlap, right?
Right.
But we go back and forth and there's little pauses in
Hmm.
between. And I go, that's how I consider a conversation with any horse is if I give an aid, I'm speaking. And then when I go back to a contact, my contact is for the purpose of listening. How does my horse respond to the aid?
Hmm.
Not did my horse respond correctly, right?
Wow.
I go,
Wow. And then for some reason in my head, I'm going back to, and this is, we allow green horses more latitude and maybe not what we consider our experienced horse's latitude. Oh, you should know that
Yeah.
kind of thinking. So I think I have to be real careful with my older horses that my schoolmasters supposedly that to give cut them a little slack.
Yeah. No, and the one thing that makes humans really polite with horses is fear. And
Really polite.
really polite. We start to get a lot more polite in our aids when we're not quite sure our horse is going to respond in a safe way. And
Well, that's
where,
a good point.
yeah, and
That's a
when
controlling
I,
thought.
yes, because when I see people really nagging horses is
Oh,
because they really know the horse isn't going to do anything unsafe and they become more and more demanding.
wow.
Yeah, I go, there's a direct correlation between
Oh,
how
wow.
safe we feel and how polite we are.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to keep that in mind.
But if we kind of imagine that horse, which any horse, I don't care how safe and reliable that horse has been their whole life, it's 1,000 pound prey animal that
Mhm.
would could easily kill us if they didn't choose to cooperate. Like if we left that little bit of respect for their power in the back of our minds,
I like that.
we might stay more polite. Like if I, even if I'm not afraid of the horse, thinking in terms of using my aids with a question mark at the end, or using a,
Exactly.
a soft, calm tone of voice and not really expecting it, like not knowing what the response is going to be. So there's no way to be right or wrong if I don't know what the response is going to be.
I like that. I always say be curious, you like the question, think of it as a question and be curious and open to the answer, the response.
Right. And maybe if the response is an unsafe response, I go, that's a different issue
True.
than if the horse
Hmm.
just turns the wrong way or doesn't go fast enough or doesn't go slow enough. I go, those are very different conversations.
Right.
I so if I need to help the horse not do something where safety is, an issue,
Hmm.
then being firmer or faster in my aids is sort of emphatically saying, don't do that. Don't touch the hot stove, right? Just don't run in the street. Don't touch the hot stove,
Right.
right? Don't play with matches, whatever. It's like, but then there's other things where it's more of safety's not an issue. And
Hmm.
so that's where we tend to become more demanding because we're no longer afraid of our horse's power. And so I
Yeah,
go, but what if
and
we stayed
asking,
polite?
yeah, asking and seeing, and maybe that's a whole nother podcast of watching, is the horse when we're asking this bigger question, where is he going with it? Is he in a thinking, learning frame of mind? Is he going into extension and you can see the whites of his eyes? All those things need to be taken into the equation.
Yeah, because the timing, the feel of our aids, the intention, the thought that
Hmm.
comes, that initiates the aid, all of that is communicating nonverbal information to our horse.
Right.
All of it. And just sometimes changing our intention changes our feel and timing and communicates things to our horse in a very different way.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right. And that, how we communicate, with all of that said, either invites another individual into an
Hmm.
interesting conversation or sort of offends them in a way where they become more defensive and go, you know what? You kind of suck. I don't want to be around you. Yeah, you're not much fun.
It's kind of that person when they call when they call and the conversation is all about them.
Yeah. You listen politely. And then you're like looking at
But you're
your
just
watch.
going like, "Oh, can you just shut up?" I have something to say too. And a horse may be very explosive with that expression. Who knows?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, from our horse's perspective, it makes me laugh, but I see some horses like if they could put their finger in their ears and go
Yes.
la 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 la
La
la
la la
la
la
la la
la.
la. Let me just get through the ride. La la
And you,
la la la.
and
Are
if
we
you
done
think
yet? Are we
about it,
done yet?
that's the schoolmaster.
Well, some lesson horses get very
Yeah.
much that way.
Yeah, that's their survival mode.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him a schoolmaster. I'd call him a lesson horse, but
Okay. Good point.
because all horses are schoolmasters if we listened.
If we listen.
We just might not be getting the lesson we intended to get, but we're going to get a
There
lesson
you
if we
go.
start listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that, like, I even will tell people for a day, just for a day, when you're having a conversation with anybody, start to just notice the tone of voice, the frequency of your words, your body language, your energy, awareness of space, all of those nonverbal components. How is that? Because what the nonverbal part does is it puts meaning behind the words. Like the
Especially to the
words,
horse.
yeah, because we have actions instead of words. But even if we're talking words, I go, there's a dictionary definition for every word.
Right.
But it's like if we take just a little simple sentence, like, I can do that, right? I go, that's why we have different punctuation to convey. I, you know, I can do that just sounds like a calm yes response.
Hmm.
I can do that, right? And if we put an exclamation point on it, the same words go, I can do that, right? And it
Hmm.
might convey more meaning because there's either, surprise or determination or more intense energy, maybe more anxiety, or
Mm.
I could put a question mark on the end of the same words and go, I can do that. Like
Yeah.
that changes the meaning of the same words,
And I've
right?
seen so many instances with that, just that little piece you brought in of people even going to catch their horse. I can do that?
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that. You just see
Or
the
that
body
horse that's
language that goes with that.
that horse that's hard to catch. We
Yeah.
walk into the pasture going, I can do that.
Yeah.
Right. and, and that energy already the horse feels from
Just got
about a
20
mile
miles.
away. Right. And the horse is like, oh, no,
Go,
you're
go,
not
go, go.
bringing that energy over
No.
here. Right.
Yeah,
And so
that's cool.
that's
That was a cool analogy of that.
And so if we take away the words, I can do that, and we use a single word sentence called a leg aid,
Right.
right? It could be with a period, leg aid exclamation point, leg
Hmm.
aid question mark, right? We
Right.
could give the leg aid really, really fast, which shows
Right.
intensity, or we could give the leg aid really, really slow, right? Which is just shows a little more laid backness. So that's what I mean by we do it all the time, even with
Yeah, we do.
words,
Yeah, we do.
because it's that nonverbal part that conveys the meaning of the word or the action, right? So it's not just the dictionary definition. There's a lot of wiggle room in there depending on how it's conveyed.
Right.
And that's what aids are. And so first we kind of got to question ourselves going, wow, am I being kind of a demanding, bossy
Right.
a-hole? Or am I kind of questioning, asking, maybe asking politely, or maybe saying, you know, let's not do that right now,
Hmm.
right? Let's not. Let's do this instead. And all of that, we can have a very calm conversation using our aids, even when our horse either misunderstood the aid, didn't respond to the aid, responded negatively to the aid. or ideally says, sure, I can do that for you.
I can
I'll
try.
give it a try. I'll give it a try.
I'll give it a
Right?
try. This is
Yeah.
my response to that.
And that
Yeah.
was something, Ray Hunt used to say all the time. He goes, like, how we use our aids can just knock the try right out of a horse.
Wow. Yeah.
And I go, you see that with people too. It's like when you get put down or criticized or
Mhm.
treated harshly all the time, it just knocks out your desire to try.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel it in my head, the difference between your own horses. Like it doesn't make any sense to take the conversation from one horse and apply it to the other,
Oh, they're
thinking you're going to get
so
the
different.
so different and to remind myself that this is not that horse.
That is such a great point, Deb, because there's some horses where, like, people have a preference. Some people are very comfortable giving heavy aids, using a
Mm,
lot of frequency and force,
mhm.
and other people don't like that feeling. They don't want to get
Exactly.
firm with the horse. They want everything to be light and easy. And every horse requires that we adjust.
Mhm.
So if I give a heavy aid to a horse who can only hear me if I'm slow and light, then I sort of like make that horse really anxious or crazy or resistant.
Right.
But if I'm a soft person and my horse is a little bit of a blockhead, not in a bad way, but I go, it just takes more, it takes being a little louder
Right.
for that horse to make a change, then I'm not going to get the change I'm looking for. I'm not going to get, I might not even get a response to my aid. And I hear that
Exactly.
all the time. People go, well, I tried it and it didn't work.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And I go, any strategy or technique or exercise or even our aids, right? Those are just sort of the tools, the words,
Exactly.
but it's how you apply them that is the communication part of it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how our horse responds helps us adjust how to give our aids.
I agree. I like it to be a healthy conversation.
Yeah. And for some horses, if I'm a bit louder, that's fine with them. That's actually what makes sense to them. That's how they want to have a
Well, that's
conversation.
a good point.
And with other horses, if I'm slower, softer, or quieter, that works for them. They can hear me better. We can
Right.
communicate better if I speak in that tone through my aids. And so, what people don't tend to do with aids, especially when we're thinking of it as a conditioned response, is every time we get a response we don't want, we just get louder. And I go,
Yes, we do.
yeah, we just get louder and louder. And the horse, it, I guess, eventually figures it out, but aren't we supposed to be the higher intelligence? But if we adapt either how frequently or infrequently we give an aid, if we adapt the amount of force we're using during an aid, those are the ways we figure out how this particular horse likes to have a conversation. But that actually is a skill we have to develop as people because everybody walks in going,
Exactly.
it's like a handshake. I go, some people love a firm handshake and some people don't, right? And how we receive the handshake. Sometimes we like the feel and sometimes we don't. And it
Hmm.
changes how we feel about that person if we don't like their handshake.
That's true. And
Right.
that, if you think about it, that's kinesthetic. That's a touch. And horses live in that world.
That is the
That's
world.
their world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind
I
of
mean,
like, oop, did you
I
freeze?
know that, yeah, I think
Oh,
I did. I know that some of my horses do understand some voice commands, but that's not really their world.
no, and horses can, like, it's so funny. Like, horses can learn any language. And when I was in Europe, all the horses learned what trot meant in German, in in English, in French. It's like because
I
it's
love it.
not that.
That's
Like
not that.
it's not that. It's the tone and the energy we're putting behind the verbal command that
Hmm.
the horse is actually reading and responding to,
Right.
right? And if I don't want my horses to do something, if they're doing something in the barn I don't like, I just go, eh, like
And they get it.
they get it.
Conditioned response.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny.
But I go, it's a fast, sharp, intense noise, and
Shut
that's
that
what they're
off. Yep.
responding to.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
guess really, I don't know, maybe you'll disagree with me, but aren't we're giving aids on the ground too. It's not just in the saddle.
Oh, always.
Yeah.
Like
So
if
to
we think of
remind that of us that we are on the
between
ground.
between a horse and human, we have our seat, leg, and rein. That's our traditional aids that we use,
Hmm.
and our contacts. So our seat, leg, and rein give information and during an aid and receive information during a contact, right? And that's with or without tools. So with or without a saddle, with a bitless
Mm,
bridle, a leverage bit, a snaffle bit,
right.
doesn't matter, right? The reins are transmitting information. And when we're on the ground, the way I started to really make progress through groundwork was when I started to think of whatever I'm doing with my body on the ground is the equivalent to my seat in the saddle.
Wow, I like that. Yeah.
Any tool that's attached to my horse's head, right, with a lead rope or whatever, any tool attached to my horse's head
Hmm.
is simulating the bridle and the reins. And any tool that's not attached to my horse, like a whip or a stick or even swinging a rope, I go, that's simulating the leg,
Right.
right? So when I see people chase horses around on the lunge line with a whip, I go, that's a constant leg aid. It
Good
just
point.
becomes meaningless,
Right. Right.
right? Or it becomes nagging,
Nagging.
right? So they go, but if I don't constantly chase my horse with the whip, he stops. And I go, great, then let him learn from experience,
Exactly.
right? Let him learn that when he stops, you're going to reapply the leg aid. And when he stops again, you're going to reapply the leg aid.
Right.
And pretty soon they go, oh, I get it. She doesn't want me to stop.
Right. I
Yeah,
like that.
that's the beginning of self-carriage. I go, if we don't have that, we have no chance of ever developing self-carriage in our horses.
I agree. I think we interfere a lot with that.
Well, or we always want something better than the horse offers.
Ugh,
And I go, that's a matter of refining and shaping, not more constant nagging. Like,
exactly.
that's where we have to get into empowering our horse to become more athletic and more capable, not just, you know, either create enough pain that they sort of do what we want or nag them enough that they sort of constantly
Or
do.
create that anxiety or fear of not even wanting to be with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we think of contacts are when we're listening and aids are when we're talking, I go, conversations like can go anywhere, like ours always do.
They
We
do.
meander. I know we kind of wander all over the place.
That's what
And
makes us unique.
well, and it's what makes it more interesting, right? Because you and I literally never know, like, don't have a script for the podcast.
No, we don't even have a topic until we show up. Are you kidding?
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah. But that's the fun part of
It
it.
is. It makes it juicy and enriching. Yeah,
Yeah, and we learn from it.
we learn a lot.
Yeah. And so that same idea, if we think of working with our horse as having a conversation with our friend,
Right.
it's like, yeah, we can meet on Zoom. We can sit and have coffee. We don't have to do a lot to have an
Right.
interesting
Just
conversation.
being each other's company.
Or we could go running or hiking or boating together, and that would be
That's true.
fun, right? So that's
Right.
doing more, but we're still having a conversation.
Exactly.
So hopefully that helps you guys have a little pause,
Little
maybe
pause in
look
your
at
day.
how your horse is responding to your aids might have something to do with how
Mhm.
demanding you sound to your horse
Mhm.
or how critical you sound to your horse,
Good point.
right? And if we some a lot of times with horses, when we change our intention behind the aid,
Mm,
they respond differently really quickly. Like it is that
yeah.
dynamic.
They're very adaptable.
Well, and it's also just like if I start yelling at somebody at the grocery store, they're going to respond probably with resistance and defensiveness,
Right.
right? And if I walk up to somebody at the grocery store politely and ask a question, they
Mhm.
might turn around and snap at me, right? But they
True.
might just turn around and politely say, I don't know,
Hmm.
right? So when we put that in the context of nonverbal conversations, aids and contacts, it can drastically change
Hmm.
how we interact with our horse, can drastically change how our horse interacts with us.
Yep.
So
Agree.
give it a try, you
Give it a
guys.
try. Let us
I
know how
know.
it goes.
I know, dude. Let us know if you tried this out and you found a happy surprise or a miserable surprise or an oh my God, palm palm face, right? And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the
Yes.
Horse Geeks podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.